And you're listening to the Rock and Roll Morning Show here on this Wednesday morning. Glad you could be with us here this morning. And we are glad to be joined once again by Ohio Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted. Jon was with us back in mid-April, and here we are about middle of July. So we thought we'd reach out and have a conversation, see where we're at in terms of a lot of things in the state of Ohio with COVID-19 and beyond. Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted, thanks for the time this morning.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you aboard here. As I said, we spoke in mid-April, and a lot has happened. A lot has changed. We've evolved, we think, a little bit. I guess from your point of view and in your estimation, Jon, what have we learned since that conversation in mid-April, and what are we continuing to learn?
Well, mostly what we've learned is we know how to control the spread of coronavirus. We know who is most susceptible, and we know how to take precautions to avoid potential deaths as a result of coronavirus. So, we know that the threat level, the older you are, the more a threat of it is. If you have underlying respiratory issues, it's a greater threat. We also know for younger people that the coronavirus is not as big of a threat of potentially being as severe with younger people. I mean, for example, there are no healthy people under the age of 19 in Ohio who've died of the coronavirus, and that gives us confidence to say, hey, we can go back to school in the fall. We can make sure that if we just use these protocols of, keeping our distance, particularly when we're inside, wearing a mask if you're able to, and just washing our hands, that we can control this thing. So we've learned a lot, and that's allowed us to open up businesses, to put plans together to return to school, have more of a normal life, at the same time recognizing that if we let down our guard, as we've seen in states in the South, from Florida to Texas to Arizona, even to California and the West Coast, that you can see the virus begin to spread again and then cause a lot of problems. Because that what happens is, when that happens, people don't want to go out as much. Businesses suffer, particularly restaurants and places like that. So we've learned a lot over the past few months.
Jon, talk to us, if you would, a little bit about that. How did we land on the school decision that was announced last week? Talk about how we get from A to B and what things are going to look like in the fall.
Well, look, you have to weigh all of because everything involves risks. If there's parents out there that are worried, I understand. I think that what I heard most of is from people that wanted kids to go back to school, largely because the value, the risk of not going back to school in terms of kids that don't get access to their education, their social emotional learning, their access in many cases to food and lunches and breakfast and things like that occur in schools for many kids who don't have those services or a good home situation where they get that kind of support. School's really important for those kids. It's important for everyone, but it's super important for some kids who don't have the kind of support services they need at home. And you weigh that against the risk of coronavirus. As I said, most kids have a pretty easy time with it if they get it. The evidence seems to show that kids don't get it as easily. They don't spread it as easily. The American Association of Pediatrics said that the risk of going to school is far less than the risk of not going. So you add all those things up from medical doctors, educators, policymakers, parents, and common sense alone. The evidence was certainly outweighed the risk. We want kids to go back to in-person school. We know how to make those environments safer. One of the things we've been moving to as a state, and we can talk more about this, is more local control of these decisions, giving local schools the decision-making authority on how transportation works, how spacing works, how masks and other things would work if they're going to use them in the schools. So that's how largely Governor DeWine ultimately came to that decision.
With the going back to schools, obviously a big topic is extracurriculars, and namely right now high school sports. A pretty big baby step was taken in a positive direction with an announcement yesterday that you made. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, if you would, John?
Yeah, up until July the 15th, we were allowing, we have sort of an experiment going on with basketball tournaments and some basketball camps in Ohio to allow contact sports to continue, to see how that works, or to reopen. We've had non-contact sports like baseball, softball, golf, things like that going on. Now we're going to move back into competition with contact sports on a limited basis. We hope, though, that will build until after July 15th, that we can then feel a little bit better about allowing all contact sports to return. That's the goal that I have, at least. And I will say we also started an awareness campaign. I Want a Season. It's called #IWantASeason. We want youth, young people, high school athletes, college athletes, professional athletes. We're working with the Browns, the Reds, the Indians, all professional sports in Ohio to raise awareness that that there is an incentive. You may think that you're 18 years old and you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof and nothing can happen to you with the coronavirus because you're strong and healthy, but if you get it, it's going to cost you some games. You could easily spread it to your teammates. It might cost you, some of your teammates. And so what we're encouraging is for students to talk to each other about wearing a mask and social distancing and things like that, that make sure that they don't get the coronavirus, that they don't spread the coronavirus, and that will help make sure that they get a season. I Want a Season campaign started yesterday. We have it on our Twitter, Instagram, all of the social media things to help athletes get the message out that they need to protect each other so that they can have a season, that they don't lose a game or two, that they don't pass it along to their teammates, because we want sports to happen. Because, look, as you know, I'm a huge sports fan. I love to compete. I think that sports are a lot more than just a game, a lot more than just physical fitness and recreation. It's where we learn teamwork. It's where we learn competitiveness. It's where we learn grit and resilience. That's what sports are ultimately about for young people. And if they're not participating in them, it's hard for them to learn those skills, because that's where you learn them. That's why we created sports in this country, in school sports, to teach those skills, and we want to see that come back this fall.
I've already had my social media flooded with the I Want a Season with our local athletes, and you mentioned the wearing of face coverings. That's become a hot button issue in the state. Why do you think that is? I mean, why a mask or a face covering has it become such a political thing, John?
Well, some people don't like the government telling them to do anything. Some people early on, and there's a lot of bad information out there about the value of wearing a mask. Look, the evidence is irrefutable. If you wear one, particularly if you're inside, where air is being circulated and all, you're going to reduce the chance that the person wearing the mask, if they happen to have coronavirus, will spread it to someone else. And when I'm wearing a mask, I'm protecting you. When you're wearing a mask, you're protecting me. And that's how we stop the spread. We have very few tools. We don't have a vaccine. There's no miracle cure. It's just how you stop the virus that gets expelled when you talk, when you're breathing, when you cough, when you're yelling. How do you stop that from getting released into the air that somebody else could breathe it in? That's what it's about. And that's just one of the ways that you can reduce the chance that you'll spread it to someone else.
Yeah.
I understand. If somebody doesn't want to wear one, they don't have to. It's their choice. I view it as being considerate towards others. When they do it, I view it as them being considerate towards me, because we're all in this together. It's just we don't have many ways to slow it, particularly if you're inside. If you're outside, you're by yourself, you're spread out, there's very little chance you're going to spread it. But when you're inside, the air gets circulated, and that's where the spread shows. So I know some people don't want to do it, and there's some legitimate reasons someone can't.
Right.
if they have respiratory issues or lots of other reasons that people can't do it. And I respect that, and people, you don't have to do it, but it just helps. And yesterday, the governor mandated in the counties, in 7 counties where the spread is mostly larger urban counties, that there is a mask mandate there. And, we had a lot of mayors and county commissioners from those counties asking the governor to put that mandate in place. So he did. But for everybody else, you don't have to wear a mask. We just recommend that you do because it's helpful at slowing the spread. That's why I ask athletes to do it, because a lot of times if you're young and healthy, you may have it and not even know it for a long time. And that means that you can actively spread it to other people, not just your teammates, but to your mother and father, your grandpa and grandma, where it becomes more of a risk. So it's a consideration for others. There's no mandate for 81 counties that anybody does it, but it's just a good idea so that we can make sure we don't spread it to one another.
Live from back here, I'm sure you've seen your home county numbers, and in our surrounding area, our numbers, relatively speaking, are lower, and there's been a lot of calls for regional decisions, localized decisions. Is that something that's on the plate as we move forward in terms of decisions on a local basis based on numbers?
Yeah, last Thursday, we announced a color-coded system, a yellow, orange, red, purple system based on the threat of spread of coronavirus. Thankfully, Williams County and I believe most of the surrounding counties are yellow. The lowest level means that coronavirus is there. It is being transferred, but at a very low rate right now. So the threat level is the lowest in places like Williams County, and that's a good thing. And that means that that there are no mandates as it relates to wearing masks in public. Now there are, the mandates do exist as it relates to working inside in businesses and things like that. But there, if you look at these rules, there's a lot of exceptions to them, but it is a more localized decision system now that we have. And the reason we have it is because we just didn't have that ability before to do the testing, to know who has the virus, to help quarantine them when we find out who does, and to really localize the data. And now we can do that. And so that means the local communities are going to be, more aware and will be in charge of more of the decision-making around the future of their communities.
Okay. If you have time, I had one question about the economy, unemployment, and where we're at there in terms of are we seeing positive numbers now? And if you wanted to talk about ohiocheckbook.gov, also a recent announcement that came about.
Yeah, we've done several things on that front. First of all, in the economy, things are getting better. It's going to be a long climb from nearly 17% unemployment to back down to 4% where we were. We're around 11 right now. So jobless claims are beginning to go down. People are beginning to go back to work, but it's going to take a while in the midst of essentially a global recession, global pandemic, to get this back where we need it, particularly when you got some states in the country who are seeing a sharp rise in the number of cases. So we're moving in the right direction. On checkbook.com, we did a merge with one of the things that I led as lieutenant governor is we're trying to use technology to improve the way we serve people, just like the way we're doing a better job of pushing data out regarding coronavirus. We're also doing a better job of working with the state treasurer, Robert Sprague, to make sure that every expenditure in the state of Ohio is online. It's on the online checkbook. You can see every expenditure, whether you're media, the general public. It helps you track state expenditures. One of the other tools that I was able to develop here through my Innovate Ohio efforts was to check. We developed an analytics tool to see if the state was overpaying. We've already found $1 million of duplicate payments, and every dollar counts these days when you have a slowing economy. And so we're using technology just to figure out how to make state government more accountable to the taxpayers, to reduce reduce costs. And these are just some of the things that I've been working on as a lieutenant governor, trying to do other things than just focus on the response to coronavirus and some of the other things that are going on. And these are going to have long-term benefits. I also have our team working on a tool, an artificial intelligence machine learning tool called Reg Explorer. We're the first state to do this. We're going to go through the entire revised code and the entire administrative code that's been building up for 200 years in the state, and do regulatory reform. Just go through it, find all the outdated regulations, all the duplicate regulations, all the things that don't make sense. Use this AI tool to do that, send it back to the agencies and tell them, hey, we want a package put together to take to the legislature to remove all of these unnecessary, duplicative, costly, useless regulations. And that's another thing that we're using technology to try to do a better job on behalf of the people of the state.
All right. Hey, John, thanks for taking the time to visit with us here in your original home area, home market here in Williams County and the surrounding area. Appreciate the job and time and hard work you guys are putting in Columbus. I know it's probably feel like a thankless position, but hang in there, keep working. I know you will for the state of Ohio. Thanks for taking time with us this morning.
Yep. We'll get through this. We'll move ahead. We'll keep Ohio moving in the right direction. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Ohio Lieutenant Governor John Husted joining us here this morning on the Rock and Roll Morning Show. Thanks for his time. We'll get you a community calendar update. More rock on the other side here on a Wednesday on B-Rock.